Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lizette Hester. I am with the Office of Family Assistance, TASI team. I would like to welcome everybody to the Office of Family Assistance Tribal TANF Learning and Action Network. We are honored to welcome Tribal TANF administrators, program staff, tribal leaders, partners, and subject matter experts from tribal communities across the country. We appreciate your leadership, your experience, and your commitment to strengthening tribal families and communities. The Tribal TANF Learning and Action Network is designed to foster collaboration, peer learning, and the exchange of practical strategies that support the unique priorities and strengths of tribal communities. We encourage you to participate actively, share your experiences, and ask questions and learn from one another throughout today's discussion, as you are the subject matter experts for your own tribes. On behalf of the Office of Family Assistance, thank you for being here and for your continued partnership. At this time, I'm going to turn things over to our partners from BLH and Mathematica, who lead our STAR team, to guide us for today's session. Thank you.
Thanks, Lisette. So welcome again, everyone. I'm going to take us through the agenda and then we can get started. And feel free to keep introducing yourself in the chat. Thank you, everyone who has already done so. So we'll start. We already did our welcome. We'll start with an overview of the session. And then we'll have two sharings from Owens Valley Career Development Center and then also Shingle Springs Tribal TANF. Then we'll move into some breakout discussions where you all can discuss with your peers in a facilitated discussion what you learned today, any questions you may have for each other, and then we will come back together and close, share some reflections, and I will share about the future sessions that will be in this series. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So the reason we're holding this learning and action series that Lisette talked about is really three reasons. So we want to provide information and peer sharing to help programs advance the statutory purposes of TANF in ways that address your unique community needs and also comply with program regulations. We also want to increase awareness of approaches that other programs have used to help strengthen families and support economic independence. And then lastly, it's really a space for you all to share your approaches, your challenges, and questions with another. So we can go ahead and go to the next slide. So focusing in on this particular session, which is titled Helping Families Thrive, Holistic Services for Stability and Resilience, I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview before I pass it over to our Tribal TANF subject matter experts for today. So the blue box at the top shows one definition of resilience as the ability to positively adapt despite experiences of significant adversity or trauma. And so your community may define this in a different way. And so when we go into breakout groups later, we'd be really interested to hear about how you define resilience. And then by holistic services, what we mean is services that are designed to support overall family well-being. So that can include services that help remove barriers so that, oh, and I think someone might be unmuted if everyone wouldn't mind muting. So services that help remove barriers so that TANF participants may be better able to reach long-term goals, such as work and stable employment. And so when we say that holistic services can be important for resilience, we mean that these types of services help families positively adapt when they face hardship or adversity. For example, supports for housing or transportation may contribute to overall family well-being so that if they face hardship, they have what they need to be able to positively adapt. So looking at what's on the screen, providing services to meet families' varied needs may help them reach their goals and become more resilient and stable. And then just connecting it to the purpose 1 and 2 of TANF. Increased stability may help keep families together so that children can be cared for in their homes or in the homes of their relatives. And then parents also likely need a variety of supports in order to find and keep jobs and be economically self-sufficient. And then lastly, also just wanted to share the point, and it's something that we can discuss more, is that culturally grounded supports that are aligned with your tribe and your tribal organization's culture can also help encourage greater participation in the program and help create strong bonds within families and communities. So a lot of general points, but we'll be able to get into some specifics of how this has looked like in tribal TANF programs in a bit. So we can go to the next slide. So before I hand it over to our subject matter experts for today, I just wanted to encourage you all to think about, as you listen, what questions do you have for the speakers or questions do you have for others related to this topic? And how might these strategies work in your community? Feel free to put your thoughts and questions in the chat. We will, if we're not able to answer them in real time, we can return to them in the breakout discussions. And then when we move to the breakout room discussions, so there will be a time to, again, share questions for the speakers or your peers. You can also share how your program defines and supports resilience, your program's challenges in supporting resilience, and data or outcomes that might show increased resilience. So things to keep in mind as you listen to the presentations. But with that, I'm going to pass it over to Owens Valley Career Development Center.
All right, next slide. All right, well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Salamawit Haptum. I'm the TANF Director for Owens Valley Career Development Center. I have 20 years in tribal TANF programs, first as a case manager, case worker, and then as a TANF office manager, and now as a tribal TANF Director. I appreciate that opportunity to be here today. And I know that since many of us work in tribal TANF programs, we face a lot of the same challenges, even though they'll look different. And I also think that many of us are definitely subject matter experts as well. So today I'd like to just share some of the things that we've learned while working toward a more holistic approach. Next slide. So just a little bit of background on Owens Valley Career Development Center is an intertribal family services organization serving 13 partner tribes. The caseload is about 500 across 7 counties and 14 offices located in Central California. Again, I think that many of us, our families face the same challenges that go well beyond just employment, transportation, childcare, housing, limited access to resources, and just the unique realities of the communities that we serve. And then what we've realized over time is that if we only focus on the immediate reason that someone comes into the office, we often miss other barriers that would eventually bring them back into crisis. So one of the things we've learned in that every tribal community has different strengths and different challenges. Rather than trying to fit families in one model, we do find that it's more effective to build services around the realities of each of our communities. Next slide. So here we kind of talk about what our mission is at OVCDC. And then when we first start talking about resilience, we realize that we need to define what that means. And so we look at economic resilience, and I think Brittany kind of talked about that as well a little bit. And so to us, it's just not just employment, right? It's stability, it's reliable transportation, it's access to childcare, it's fewer crises, and then ultimately being able to be just more self-sufficient over time. And then what goes hand in hand is really family resilience, right? So it means the stable and safe homes, healthy family relationships, youth who are engaged in positive activities, also engaged in school, stronger support systems and families. And then I think one of the last but not definitely least is just cultural identity and connection is very important in the work that all of us do. And then one thing, again, we've learned is instead of asking, how do we help the participants today, we really want to say, how do we help the families become stronger over time? And so next slide is our holistic approach to stability is one of the biggest challenges we've been working towards is shifting our mindset from asking what services, again, does a participant need today, but what does the family need over time? Again, that may sound like a small change, but for us, it's completely changed, really how we have this conversation. We begin looking at every family through these 4 different lenses. So again, economic stability. Employment, again, is certainly part of it, but it's and I probably say this a lot, it's the transportation, it's the childcare, it's the financial stability. If someone gets a job but loses it because they didn't have reliable transportation, then we're back to that we're not solving the underlining problem that they have. The second area is family stability. We try to look at what's happening in the home. Are there parenting needs? Is there family stress? Is there literacy needs? Are there healthy relationships? Those affects a family's ability to maintain stability, even if, with that economic stability can be really weighed heavily if that family stability isn't there. The third is youth development. So again, looking at the family as a whole, we realize that supporting parents isn't always enough. When youth have positive activities, leadership opportunities, educational support, then the entire family benefits. And finally, again, cultural resilience. As Tribal TANF programs, we are uniquely positioned to strengthen cultural identity, community connection, and a sense of belonging that they're not going to get from a county program. So we found those protective factors can be just as important as many of our traditional services. We don't always have the resources or the time to address every one of these areas during a single meeting, but what this framework has done, it gives to our staff is a way of thinking about the whole family and the long-term planning that the family needs. Next slide. So what does success look like for families? Once we began looking at families more holistically, it also changed how we define success. Employment is certainly, again, one of the measure, but we've learned it's only part of the picture. Success might mean a parent who finally has that reliable transportation and consistently can get to work. And of course, that helps them maintain employment. Just those soft skills is so important in a workplace that if you can't get to work, no matter how well you do your job, if you're not reliable, you may not keep that employment. It may mean just having that family's stable housing so that they're not worried about where they're going to live or who they're going to be living with. It could be a youth participating in our prevention activities, or again, leadership opportunities for the first time, improving school attendance and grades, and having that relationship, I think healthy relationship with their peers is important. Sometimes success is simply seeing stronger family relationships and fewer recurring crises. One thing we've learned is that celebrating those small milestones keep families motivated, because we're not always looking for those big milestones. Even the small ones are just as important, and they're going to lead you to those bigger ones over time. Next slide. So as the most challenging barriers to resilience, as all of you probably know, families rarely come in with one challenge. And then many of those barriers we see are connected. So transportation continues to be one of our biggest challenges because it affects employment, school attendance, and for our service areas, which are in cities and rural communities on tribal reservation, sometimes transportation just isn't available, and trying to figure out what kind of work employment activities to provide for those that have challenges with transportation. Childcare is another significant barrier. Even when employment opportunities exist, parents might not be able to find those childcare providers that they trust. Not everyone is trustworthy with their most sacred gift, which is their children, and so that becomes a barrier as well. Housing instability, utility needs can quickly undo any progress that a family has made. Historical and generational trauma can also influence a family's ability to move towards long-term stability. And then something that we don't always think about is just documentation barriers. So when I say documentation, I'm referring to things like birth certificate, social security cards. Depending on where they live, it could just be hard for them to get. And then that could delay access to other services outside of our own and benefits that they could receive from other programs. So we try to look at all of those, and those become a challenge, especially when we have caretaker relatives taking over their grandchildren. They don't always have these documentations, which could be a barrier to even get services from us. And so one thing we've learned, again, is that when one barrier is identified, there are often other barriers connected to it. So just taking a few extra minutes to look beyond the presenting problem can create a complete plan for the family. Next slide. So just addressing barriers. And I think a lot of programs have transportation assistance, which for us could look like fuel, vehicle repair, registration support, childcare, employment. We do work experience on the job training, workforce support. We have people on staff that are able to do that, financial stability, rental assistance, closing tools, youth risk factors. So we have a lot of programs like Unity. Some of our staff could go into the schools to help connect the youth and do different activities there, cultural activities, language activities. So there's a lot of support that we try to provide. Family instability, we do parenting classes, healthy relationship classes. So there's different ways that we do try to address the barriers. Next slide. Coordinating services. I think that no man's in an island by themselves. We couldn't do this work by ourselves. The program can't do it by themselves. So it's so important to reach out to services in your community to help out, or internal programs that you might have to work together within the family, whether it's going to the schools and being in an IEP meeting is also important. And I think leveraging resources, depending on what your budget looks like, or things that we can't do within our budget, and having those resources in the community to help us is so important. And sometimes our families are working with other programs and really knowing what the needs are. And maybe sometimes they haven't expressed some issues with us, but maybe they've identified it with our partners. And so I think working together, we can build a solid plan for that family. Next slide. So as our approach has evolved, so has the way we think about success. Of course, one of the things with us is employment and training and things like that, which is obviously very important, but we really want to pay attention to that family stability, the youth engagement. All of those things are going to help with that employment. Maintain employment when your family is sound, when everything's better in the household. You're able to maintain employment, you're able to go to work. You're not thinking of all the things that are maybe going on in the home. So for us, it's really looking at that and the stability of the family. And also, one of the things that we do is look at our participants. How do we engage with them? And something that we're starting soon is having a participant advisory committee, which we've never done before. And so that's important to get feedback straight from those receiving our services, and not just in a way of a survey, but really in a structured, ongoing way. We really see what the needs are, and also see successes that maybe we haven't identified in the past. So that's something that we're really looking at, because successes aren't always on a report or a spreadsheet. And so we want to really look at that and what that could look like. And also just the confidence that we see in our families, them coming to activities together. That's also another way that we kind of look at what success is outside of just numbers in a database. And then the next slide is lesson learned. As we work, reflect on the work, a few lessons that continue to stand out to us is, first, every community is different. So it's important to build services around that local strength and needs. Practical supports are often have the greatest impact because they remove barriers right away. Third, relationships matter. Even our relationships with our participants, if they don't trust us, it's going to be hard. It's just, they have to know that we are here for them. And so building that relationship with them, and also building relationship within our communities, is going to be important. Finally, resilience isn't built overnight. We're still learning, and we're continuing to refine our approach, just like probably many of your programs. If there's one thing that we've learned, again, is that resilience isn't built through one service. It's built through hundreds of small interactions over time. And sometimes it's just simply listening long enough to uncover barriers that the participant wasn't comfortable sharing at first. So just looking at those small moments are often what creates lasting change for our participants. And next slide. One of the things for us was important in coming into today is obviously sharing what we do, but really learning from everyone else, because I think all of us could benefit from each other. We're working with again, not specifically the same people, but the same type of people and with the same kind of unique challenges. And so if we can work together and give each other some best practices that could work within our program, we want to take that in today. And so we appreciate that you allowed us to get this time. And we just hope to continue to learn from you guys today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I will pass it to our partners at Shingle Springs Tribal TANF.
Great. Thank you, Brittany. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniel Delgado. I'm the Executive Director for the Shingle Springs Tribal TANF program. Happy to be here today, share a little bit about our processes and services that we provide. So next slide, please. So our program is administered by the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians in association with Quetzaldehi Wintu Nation. That consists of a TANF board, advisory board, and they're appointed tribal members from Shingle Springs. And then we have our tribal council, which consists of elected tribal members from Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians. Next slide. I want to share our mission and core values. A while back, we created our 5-year strategic plan, and we identified as a group what best fit the communities that we serve. And so we developed our mission statement, our core values, and I highly recommend this to other programs to really take that time to invest in the services that you're providing to your communities and get feedback from your staff. We service 4 counties in Northern California, so there are a little bit subtle differences in each county that we serve, so it's great to get that feedback. You could always use that opportunity to evaluate your services, your operations, and take a more holistic approach to the services you're providing. Our next slide, please. And of course, we attribute all our services to at least one purpose of TANF. We adhere to those when we provide our ongoing supports, our intakes to our families, our ongoing programming through prevention. So our next slide too, sorry. We have our program departments split up to where we have our administration team, we have our case management team, and then our prevention programming team. And each pillar kind of supports one another in various facets. Next slide, please. There we go. So our case intake and approval process, we have our applicants complete an eligibility questionnaire. They would go through an intake appointment, and if eligible, would go through a mandatory orientation. After that is our family wellness plan development section, and that's where we get to really actively engage with our families. We provide assessments there. We identify their barriers they may have. We list their short-term and long-term career goals. We'll also look at what support services may help them overcome these barriers. And even at that time, we'll provide a youth wellness plan for our youth, and that really assists them with tools they need to grow and some opportunities that they would not have if they weren't on Tribal TANF services. And then after that, we'll do internal and external referrals to our other departments or outside agencies. In our employment department, they provide referrals, job leads. They do resume building, but they also do our transitional cases. So they'll provide services when cases move to transitional status. And when we were talking about our employment services, we look at how do we define economic resilience. And we look at a family's ability to meet their basic needs, how they would recover from financial challenges, and how they work towards their long-term stability and prosperity. This includes obtaining and maintaining employment, earning self-sufficient wages, and also paying bills on time. How do they build a savings for emergencies, how they reduce debt, and how they plan for their future goals. Next slide, please. Our education department really is supportive as well in meeting with our youth and our adults and various ways. They take them out to college tours. They do their education planning. And so they've been real supportive and cohesion with our employment department. Our next slide. Our prevention department really provides comprehensive services, and they target, purposes 3 and 4. They always tie in a cultural component into all programming. And just our workflow here that we do with our prevention programming is they have to do proposal forms. They have to have each activity detailed, who's going to be working on that with that class or that workshop, what goals of TANF is that meeting, what are our cost estimates. Also, they'll attach, flyers, materials list. They'll submit that through our internal review process. They'll add it into our electronic database and then conduct the outreach. We really want to standardize that service at all sites. And we're looking at each month they'll meet as a team and determine kind of what the need is in the community at that time and how to further support our families. We do workshops for young children, such as our Little Feathers story time class, or for our teenagers, we have a young men's drum group and Daughters of Tradition classes. We provide Motherhood, Fatherhood is Sacred. And then for our full family activities is more of a family culture night that we do at all sites. And the scope of that changes monthly, but it's always intentional of keeping the family doing healthy activities together. Next slide, please. Well, our next slide was we're just going over our proposal form and documentation. We have it standard at each site, as I said. They really want to do a lot of follow-up too with our prevention programming, kind of what was successful during that class. Gives them time to evaluate what's working, what's not working, and they can really look at what outcomes that they met during that time. We having technical difficulties, Brittany?
Yes, my computer decided to restart in the middle of the presentation. Please give me a moment.
No problem.
As we wait, feel free to, think about questions that you may have for the speakers that we can, or each other as we get into the breakout groups after this. Sorry about the tech issues. Emily, also, if you're able to make me a host, I can share my screen just so we can keep going.
I just messaged you about that, so that's perfect.
Perfect.
Okay. I'll do one better. I'll share my screen.
Okay, thank you.
Of course. Sorry, just scrolling down to where we were.
Good to go. All right. Yeah, as I was mentioning about our activity proposals and approval process is a copy of our proposal form that we use. And, like I said, we want to keep it standard from site to site and ensure that we're going through the proper processes. We're conducting adequate outreach to our families. We refer to the other eligibles in our community as our prevention-only relatives. So we like to invite those families out to certain programming as well. And then we have our event follow-up and final documentation on attendance and any necessary information that we need to share, whether that's a working class, whether the survey responses were positive or suggesting other alternative programming. Next slide. Here's some examples of our prevention activities. And we looked at how we defined family resilience, and we look at it as the ability for families to remain connected, with them feel supported and stable while navigating these challenges. Family resilience is reflected when children can safely remain in their own homes or in the homes of their relatives, and when families access resources during times of crisis, and when they build the confidence and support networks needed to thrive. Next slide. And we'd like to also have a satisfaction survey every couple of years. We want to gauge how we're doing. We want to know if these families are feeling connected. We want to build trust through participant engagement. And we want to really, our goal is to meet program participants and program requirements while ensuring participants feel supported, respected, and engaged throughout their entire journey. Trust is often the biggest barrier individuals and families face when accessing services. There's a bunch of examples of past experiences where families have felt that they weren't welcomed in. So we really look at how we can intentionally build trust with our families through first engagement, building trust through all interactions. We look at, setting up a team to really address that, the welcoming piece for all families entering each one of our buildings. That's generally done through a warm welcome, a greeting, being genuine, being authentic, offering, water, coffee, or snacks for their kids while they're in our office. We really want to honor their time too. We don't want to have families here waiting around for a long time. So we really want to honor their time. Everyone's really busy, so we want to respect that and let them know that we're appreciative of them being in our offices. Our next slide too is some of our participant survey feedback that we received, and we really want to know with our families, what barrier have you overcome while on the program? We want to know what's most beneficial to our families, what services we provide that help them overcome these barriers. Next slide is the additional survey response tell us about a positive experience you've had. And they're open to share, like I said, they're building trust more with our families. They're more willing to provide feedback to us. We really enjoy bringing our families in as much as possible. We know that there's barriers now with the cost of living, the transportation barriers, the cost of fuel. So we do host some of these meetings that we have virtually versus in person as they were done several years ago. So we really just want to engage with our families as much as possible. Like I said, get feedback from them and address barriers needed. We think the surveys have been beneficial to us to provide that connection to them. We don't want to burn people out on surveys, so we kind of look at maybe every 2 years is doing all program participant surveys and really trying to make those changes from there. Every 3 years, we renew our program plan, and that's a good time to make adjustments and pivot a little bit to provide the necessary services for our families. And then the last slide is just a thank you from me and my team for allowing us to share some of our services and programs today. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. So I'll go over the breakout questions. So again, what questions do you have for the speakers or for each other? How would you define economic resilience and family resilience, or what does that mean to your program or community? What are some ways that your program works to support economic and family resilience? What is a challenge your program has faced in supporting economic or family resilience? How have you tried to or succeeded in addressing that challenge? And then lastly, how might you know how well your program is supporting participants' economic and family resilience? What data or information could help you? Hope everyone had a fruitful discussion in your breakout group. I got cut off a little bit mid-sentence as we were wrapping up, but that's typically how it goes. So thanks everyone. Claire and I will just give a short report out about what was discussed. So I can share first from the Owens Valley group. So we talked a lot about the importance of having parents like model healthy relationships and work ethic for their children and their family, the importance of education and really promoting that so that there's, different opportunities that can be available to families. But we also heard the point that, that's not always a family's goal. Like, for example, one person shared that in their community, which is a fishing community, a lot of children aspire to do what their parents did and work, in the fishing industry and a fishing boat. So the importance of really centering what, a family and a person's personal goal is so important so that they're actually, want to make steps towards achieving that goal. And then we talked a little bit about strategies for participant engagement as well. And so there are some good examples shared for that. So that is just briefly what we talked about. I'll go ahead and pass it to Claire.
Awesome. Thanks, Brittany. Our group got to really dive in to more from Shingle Springs. So we discussed how Family Voice really drives their programming, which came through in the presentation. We got to learn a little bit more. Every child has an individualized wellness plan, and youth programming is tailored to their specific interests and needs, which I thought was incredible. Education and employment coordinators meet monthly to plan classes, and they use feedback from family culture nights that they hold, which are their primary source of family engagement. And another key takeaway was how important that relationships are as the foundation of their programming between staff and families. So the staff intentionally connect with participants and families one-on-one at every event that they hold, offering incentives, the tailored programming I mentioned before, and removing barriers to participation to really foster family engagement consistently. They've also expanded classes beyond the Sacramento office to make their programming more accessible, which has been a success. And then lastly, something that I thought was really cool is how personalized and individualized their celebration of successes are. So they hold an annual success banquet that highlights outcomes like high school completion and employment, and then also personal milestones like securing housing or repairing their vehicles, really just highlighting successes that are as unique as the families and participants themselves. So thank you, Daniel and Shannon, for sharing.
Claire. Before we close out, I also just wanted to put a question in put a poll out. We had received a question from one Tribal TANF program around property taxes to avoid homes being put on auction. Emily, would you mind opening up the poll? I'm also going to put the question in the chat. So we wanted just to see like what related to the importance of like housing, what have programs, if you have experience paying for property taxes for a participant so that their home, to avoid their home being put on auction. So Emily, I'm not sure if you're able to open up the poll. People can also put in the chat if they have experience. We may reach out to you to hear more insights. Go ahead, Emily.
The poll is open. You should see a notification at the bottom of your screen around where the mute and the chat boxes are. You guys should see a little indentation to participate in the poll. And if you don't see it, like Brittany said, please use the chat. We'll collect all the information.
Yeah, I'm actually not seeing it, Emily, but
I was able to see it, and I was able to.
Oh, okay. Perfect.
That's it. Yeah, there's two options.
Okay, so yeah, if anyone does have experience, also we would welcome you to share your thoughts by emailing us. So I'm going to go ahead and take us to the last slide, but yeah, feel free to keep putting in the chat if it's something you have experience with. We can go to one more slide. I'll just share what's happening next. So as we mentioned earlier, this is part of a series. So the next session we're going to hold is on July 9th at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific. The title of that is Supporting Families, Healthy Marriage and Responsible Fatherhood Programming in Tribal TANF. We will also have another session in August titled Strengthening Economic Independence Through Employment Services. And then also just to flag, we are going to be creating companion products to accompany kind of what the main lessons and ideas were from this session, and those will be available as well as the recording on the STAR webpage. And once these things are posted, we will send out an email to all the registrants to let you know. If you have any other questions or thoughts, please feel free to email us. I'll just drop the email in the chat. starinfo@blhtech.com. Oh, sorry, was someone going to say something?
Yeah, a question about that. So I don't particularly have any experience in that, but that's not to say that that our program hasn't paid for that. However, what we can do is we can actually deduct it from like accountable income. Like we can deduct it from your gross property tax. But as for paying it, I can't answer yes or no.
So thanks for that insight, Daniel. That's helpful. Well, I'm sure there's lots more discussion we could have, but this takes us to the end of our session today. Thank you everyone so much for joining. We hope to see you on July 9th. And yeah, feel free to email us if you have any other questions or thoughts. Thank you, everyone.